What's up everyone? Welcome back to Scrap Bin Garage, where we take this C4 Corvette that was once destined to be turned into scrap metal, and we turn it into an absolute fun haver using spare parts and as much stuff that we can find in the scrap bin. My goal for the night is to get this passenger seat put in. It's a Kirky race seat that was out of a Ford Escort circle track car. It was actually the very first car that I raced circle track. So essentially this is what I'm hoping the seat to look like when it's all mounted up. A little bit of lean back, so that way it's at least somewhat comfortable. Obviously these Kirkys are not meant to be comfortable by any means, but it's a lot better than being straight up in the back. So a little bit of tilt back, obviously keeping it as low as possible. We want to stay below that roof line. The plan is, you can see Keenan actually cut off those areas on the pillars on both sides and plated them in preparation for a main hoop that will be going over. So obviously we want to keep the seats as low as possible. So I'm gonna have to make up some sort of mount for underneath. Not quite sure how I'm gonna do that. Honestly, I'll probably end up tapping into the stock locations with some metal and then probably welding up some brackets to do a side mount on these seats. So the big thing is we've got both seats mounted in the car. Both of these came out of my circle track cars. So the passenger side came out of an Escort race car that was actually my first race car that got me into circle track. It was a little small, so Keenan ended up actually heating it up and using a spreader bar, and we spread out those rib protectors. So now everyone can actually fit in it. So it actually works out really well. And then the driver's seat is out of my Chevy Malibu V6 car that I race in the asphalt circle track up here where we're located. It fit really well. It's a little bit farther forward than the passenger side. Really that was just to fit us to the steering wheel, and it works out perfect. So what's the plan with this?
Behind me is a 1990s model sportsman race car. Oh, you didn't get it here.
So what's the plan? What are we taking out of here?
From this car, we will be removing the brake master cylinder and the pedal. We're not sure about the throttle yet. Even if I don't know if we're gonna do a linkage or if we're gonna do a cable. But yeah, that is the plan. This is the worst race car I think I've ever seen. This looks like something Taylor would build.
Yeah, this thing's a little...
Well, here.
Well, listen. At least we know that the buck stops here.
It sure does, Taylor, it's great.
As you can see here, we have the brake pedal assembly mounted in the car. This was crazy, actually. We really didn't think this was gonna work as well as it did, but it ended up literally bolting right in. We had to drill 2 holes and that was it. This is out of a Sportsman circle track car. It's the one that we took some other parts out of. You'll definitely see a lot of it. We plan on taking quite a bit of parts from it. But master cylinder that we pulled with that brake pedal assembly, and literally had to drill one bolt on each side, and it literally bolted right in. It was a perfect fit. We are gonna look at getting a smaller steering wheel. This one is kind of on the larger side, so when it comes to manipulating pedals, we might run the risk of kind of getting in the way of ourselves. So I'm guessing this is probably like a 350 mil steering wheel. I had one in an Escort. It did get cut out. We don't really know where it's at. Hopefully we can track it down. But I believe that's like a 300 or 310. It's very small. It's a very cool piece. From what I understand, from what I got told about that steering wheel, is it's kind of a vintage racing wheel. So that would be really cool if we could track that down. So in the first video, I talked about how we were mounting a Duracell battery in the back. Things kind of changed. Keenan realized, hey, instead of trying to fabricate some elaborate mount to mount that Duracell in, why don't we just use a normal battery out of a Chevy truck that uses a Chevy hold down? Super simple. This is what this car is all about. It's about being as simple and as cheap as possible, reusing as much as we can. So instead of fabricating mounts for a smaller battery, sure, it might weigh less. Obviously we're trying to keep the car light, but I mean, 10 pounds, 15 pounds for a battery really isn't that big of a deal. It's a battery that we can get at Walmart, so if we're out and about and it happens to go bad, it's readily available at any Walmart. Those EverStart batteries are awesome. We use them in almost all of our vehicles. So the big thing that we're waiting on with this car that's really, I don't want to say holding back a lot of the stuff that we can do, because obviously there's a lot of stuff that we've been able to do up to this point. The little stuff that obviously it's nice to get done now before the motor and trans is in. The engine mounts should hopefully be here in about a day or two. Hopefully they don't get delayed. We're about to get a bunch of snow, so you never know with shipping. But once we get the motor stabbed in the car, then there's gonna be a lot getting done. So if you can see behind me, Wisconsin got some snow. So the snow kind of delayed our shipment for our motor mounts. We were really hoping to get the motor put in the car this weekend, because then we could get a lot more done. But as you can see, it's still empty. So Wednesday night, we will be looking to stab that motor in, and then the real fun can begin. We can start running fuel lines, we can get it all wired up electrically, we can start looking at putting a radiator in, getting our electric fans put in, and then finishing up the front with a bumper to keep all that protected. So I've got the switch panel that I made up, kind of just temp installed. Worked out really well. I already had these stock brackets on the tunnel. So we ended up just kind of mounting it to there, just ended up bending up a little piece of aluminum. But essentially it'll be ignition switch, fuel, fans, obviously starter switch. Kept it real simple up there. So as far as electrical goes, we have our battery behind the driver. The plan is power will come off the battery, and probably mounted on this back wall here will be, I believe it's an 88 to 91 Chevy pickup truck. They have awesome distribution blocks. I've got one laying around, I'll show you. I used them in my Turbo Silverado truck. I had 2 of them. They work out really well. You throw power to them, and I think it's got like 5 posts that you can attach to. So we'll have a distribution block on the back wall here, which will then feed our fuse block, which will then go to our switches, and then we'll have relayed switches for all the components that we are trying to power. So Keenan finished up. The dash support bar turned out really well, worked out perfect. And so when it comes to this dash bar, I know he was kind of thinking about running some bars off with some sort of motocross handlebars for the passenger to hold on to, almost kind of like a side-by-side handlebar grip that you see in some razors and stuff like that. So unfortunately for the roll cage, none of our cars that we had laying around had a wide enough cage. So we ended up finding the one that was as wide as possible, which came out of the yellow stock car that you've seen before. Keenan ended up cutting it out and split the cage in half, mounted it on the center post. So now all that's left is to fill this gap. And I know the footage might be a little on the light side this week. It's been kind of hard setting up a phone to take lengthy videos that we can then time lapse. I am definitely gonna try to do more for next week. I kind of got some ideas on what we can do. I think I've got an old phone that I can set up and just let it record the entire time that we're here. I apologize if maybe it's a lot of more recap than action. Definitely gonna try to fix that for next week. We appreciate you watching these videos. We're having a blast working on the car. I'm having a blast kind of learning how to do all this stuff. You know, I've really only dabbled in it in high school when I took a video editing class, but it's been a long time since I've done that. So this has been really cool, kind of getting back into it, trying to make cool videos for you guys to watch and for us to be proud of. You know, we'd always talked about doing this YouTube stuff for so long, and there's so many people out there, and when the market's flooded with all this stuff, how do you stand out? And I think, it doesn't really matter about standing out and trying to be different from everyone else. I think we're just trying to be who we are and build fun builds and have fun doing it. That's really what it's all about. If you're not enjoying what you're doing, then why are you even doing it? So we appreciate all the love and support from you guys. Thank you for watching, and tune in next week when we hopefully will have a motor stabbed in the SalvageC4 Corvette.